Hello, math students, and welcome back to Module 2, Arithmetic Operations, including Division of Fractions. And this is Lesson 8, and it is called the distributive property. Okay, the distributive property. Now, I know in the last lesson I told you that that was going to be the last lesson for the module, but I was researching over the weekend and I realized that we need to discuss distributive property just to make sure that if you've already learned it, it reminds you, and if you haven't, that I can give you some information that will help you with doing division. And so our goal for today we will learn how to use and apply the distributive property with fractions and decimals. Okay? So the question that I want you to think about is, what is the distributive property? Okay, so things to know. I'm just going to teach you this lesson as if you don't know what the distributive property is. The distributive property is the property used when multiplying addends by a specific amount. So there are some key words in this definition that you may not be familiar with. This first one is called an addend, and then the other one is distributive, actually has a verb that goes with it, and it's called distribute. So we're going to talk about that next. So the distributive property is the property used when multiplying addends by a specific amount. So what distribute means, and I know that you know what this word means because I've actually used it in class before, but distribute means to spread out, okay? Addends are the numbers that are being added together. So if you think about a math sentence and you have blank plus blank, then these guys right here are addends because they are the numbers that are being added together. So this number right here and this number right here, they actually have a name and they're called addends. So addends are the numbers that are being added together. So an example of this would be, please distribute the papers to their owners. That means that you're passing them out to who they belong to, right? So distribute means to spread out or to pass a value out. In math, we distribute a number by multiplying it to the other numbers being added. So those are the addends. So basically, if you look at this example right here, we have 3 times the quantity x plus 7. Well, what this means with the distributive property is this means that you would multiply 3 times x and 3 times 7. So the way this looks is you're taking the number that sits outside of the parentheses and you're multiplying it by everything inside. So we have 2 addends. Does everybody see the 2 addends? The 2 addends that we have are x and 7. So what that means is we have to take 3 times x plus 3 times 7 because you're distributing that 3, and the way we distribute it is we multiply it, right? We're distributing that 3 and we're multiplying it by the 2 addends, and the 2 addends are x and 7. And then we also have to remember that inside the parentheses we're adding, so this little word right here, and, for this example, means that you're putting them together, so you're adding them. So in the example of distributive property, you're taking 3 times x plus 3 times 7. And so what it looks like when you actually solve it is you have 3x plus 21. And that is the distributive property, okay? So we're going to try a few together. So the 2 addends that we have in this one are 6x, right, plus 2. So those are the 2 addends. And then if you're distributing it, that means that you're taking the number on the outside and we're multiplying it by both the addends. So we're going to take 5 times 6x and we're going to take 5 times 2. And boys and girls, it's really, really important that you multiply it by both addends, both addends. So our answer to this one would look like, well, what is 5 times 6? We have 30. X plus 5 times 2 is 10. And so that's how it would look when you have the distributive property. Okay? So that's really not so difficult, is it? Okay, so let's do another one. We have this one with 2 addends, and our 2 addends are 4x, and we have 8. So 4x goes here, 8 goes here, and we're taking 7 and distributing it to the 4x and to the 8. So we have 7 times 4x and 7 times 8. So again, when we're all finished, it would be 28x plus 56. So the distributive property really is not that difficult at all, as long as you pay attention and you know what you're doing. Okay, so now we have to also know that the distributive property works with fractions and decimals in the same way. So we're just going to take what we've been learning and keep going. So again, we have two addends. Here they are, this plus this, right? And so in this one, the addend is 10x. In this one, the addend is 35. So we're going to take 1/5 times 10x, and then we're going to take 1/5 times 35. Well, boys and girls, you've been working with fractions a lot lately, so let's rewrite it so we can see it. So we have 1/5 times 10/1x plus 1/5 times 35/1. Now that's not too hard. So now let's simplify it one more time to make sure you've got it. What is 1 times 10? Well, that's 10. What is 5 times 1? That's 5. And don't forget your x, because that variable is there and it's important. Plus 1 times 3 is 35. Excuse me, 1 times 35 is 35. 5 times 1 is 5. And then, believe it or not, we can still go. We can still simplify it. But as I ran out of room, I'm going to come over here. So now I have 10/5 x plus 35/5. And I can actually simplify that one more time. What is 10 divided by 5? We have 2. Don't forget your x. Plus 35 divided by 5, which is 7. Okay? And so now we have all of those simplified out. So we now know that 1/5 of 10x plus 35 has an answer of 2x plus 7. Okay? So that's how you would distribute it with the fraction. So I know it looks complicated, but if you take it step by step, it's really not that hard. So now let's try another one over here, because I want to give you lots of opportunity to practice. So we have 2/3 is the number that we're going to distribute, and the addends on this one are 9x plus 6. And I actually want you to do that one without me. So that's going to be your practice one. And you are going to have to do several steps just like we did it with the other fraction, but I want you to try it. And if it's too complicated, then we'll talk about it when we get into class. So now let's also discuss that you can do this with decimals. Decimals are the exact same way. So again, you find your two addends. So our two addends on this one are 8x plus 14, and we're taking 0.5 times 8x. So we're going to go 0.5 times 8x, 0.5 times 14. Okay, so that's not so difficult, right? So now you're going to take, and you have to do some math on this one, you're going to do 0.5 times 8, and we get this, and we get this, so it's actually 4. So this one simplifies to 4x plus, and then you're going to take 0.5 times 14, and we get 20, right? And then we get 0, so that's 2, placeholder 5, and that's 0. So we add those together, and we get 0, and we get 7, and we get 0, and we have 1 decimal point, and this one is 7. So that one was actually pretty easy. So our answer to this, when we distribute it, is 4x plus 7. Okay, so now, again, you're going to do the same thing with this one, right? Is you have two addends. The two addends are 12x plus 8, and then you're going to multiply those by 6/10. And you're going to do that for each one. I would like you to try those two by yourself. And again, we're going to practice this in class, so don't freak out. And then I have one more thing that I want to talk to you about is we can write it another way if you would like. And the thing that's cool about this one is you want to think about area. And how do you find area when you're working with rectangles? You take the length times the width, right? That's how you find the area. So basically, we're distributing the exact same way, except it looks different. So for example, in this one, to find the area of that first addend, you would take 1.3 times 4 plus, again, you're finding the area of this one, which this is 1.3. So 1.3 times the length is 8. So we're basically doing the distributive property. So on this problem, the way it looks is you have 1.3 parentheses 4 plus 8. So do you see how it's exactly the same thing? So then we would take 1.3 times 4, that's 12, that's 4 plus 1 is 5, and so we have 5.2 plus 1.3 times 8 is 24, so that's 8, 9, 10, 1 decimal point, plus 10.4. So that's the answer for the distributive property. And then if you want to find the whole thing together, because this says to plus, then we can simplify it one more time. Add your decimals first. So 2/10 plus 4/10 equals 6/10, right? And 10 plus 5 equals 15. So that's how you can use the area model to do the same thing, okay? And then the last one, we would do it again. So we have, remember that we are finding the area of this rectangle plus this rectangle, and we're using length times width. So we're going to say our add-ins are 1/4 times 32 plus 1/4 times 20. So again, we know how to do this, right? So we would take it and we would say 1/4 times 32 over 1 plus 1/4 times 20 over 1, and that simplifies again to 32/4 plus 20/4, which we can simplify again, and I ran out of room, so I'm going to write it bigger down here so you can see it. So 32/4 plus 20/4, and we can simplify it one more time because 32 divided by 4 is 8, plus 20 divided by 4 is 5, and then we finally get an answer of 13. Okay? So, boys and girls, the distributive property, let's write it as the distributive property. So the amount that we have is 1/4 times the quantity 32 plus 20, just like we did on the other side. Okay? So the distributive property is kind of fun if you actually can just focus on finding your two add-ins that you have, right? Two add-ins here, two add-ins here. You're going to do the two add-ins here. I did the two add-ins here. You're going to do the two add-ins here. I did the two add-ins here. So if you're finding the two add-ins for each one, the problem of distributive property is very, very simple. So let's go back to our goal. Today we will learn how to use and apply the distributive property with fractions and decimals. And that's exactly what we did. Okay, so hopefully you can tell me, answering the question, what is the distributive property? So you need to answer that question for me. I need you to do 2/3 times the quantity 9x plus 6, and I need you to do 6/10 times the quantity 12x plus 8. And those will be your practice. And then we'll do some more in class when I see ya. All right, kiddos, that's all I have for you today. Talk to you soon. Bye.